All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Obaid. You're listening to Heretics Corner. With me, I have my co-hosts, Nulli and Deen, who have taken a break from running away from poisonous snakes and spiders in Australia to join us.
Hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
And today we're really, really excited. This is our first show with guests, and we have Yasmine Mohammed and Jimmy Bangash. So I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Jimmy. I'm sorry about that.
That was a very authentic pronunciation of my name, actually. Usually people say Jimmy Bangash, but your Bangash was very well pronounced, yeah.
That's good. Jimmy and Yasmine work with an organization called Free Hearts, Free Minds. And I was hoping that they would talk to us a little bit about that, because basically what they do is they help ex-Muslims in Muslim majority countries get counseling services, and I might be messing some of that up as well. So I thought I'd hand it over to Yasmine so she can talk a bit about herself, how the organization started, and then we can discuss with Jimmy some of the more nuts and bolts of it. So Yasmine, if you want to tell us about that, please.
That's also a very authentic pronunciation of my name, too. Yasmine, that sounds so Arabic. You sound like my mom. I actually mispronounced my own name as Yasmin. Rhymes with Jasmine.
My sister does the same thing. My sister does the same thing.
But yeah, how I came up with it. So once I started this activism, once I started writing my book online, actually I started on Tumblr, and then I started getting contacted by people all across the world who were closeted ex-Muslims. And in the beginning, I could handle it. I could handle all of the messages I was getting. And then it just started to get really heavy. And I started to get people who were suicidal and in dire situations, and I had no way of helping them. And it started to weigh me down so much that it affected my work. I had to take time off work because I was just emotionally distraught. I was not trained, because I'm not a psychologist or anything. So I didn't know how to separate myself from the people I was speaking to, especially since a lot of the people I was speaking to, I was incredibly empathetic to what they were going through because I went through the exact same thing. So it was really hard for me to separate myself. And then I realized, okay, I really need help. I can't do this. I need a professional. And so I started searching around for professionals to help me. But because there are counselors online, like through Skype. There's different programs for people that have left their religions. There's nothing like it for Muslims. There's nothing like it for ex-Muslims. And there's especially nothing like it for ex-Muslims that are in Muslim majority countries, where they could be killed. So it's extremely high risk. And so in my search, I realized, I'm like, I can't just put these people in the hands of a counselor or a psychologist who doesn't have any experience or understanding of being a Muslim. And then I was just at a loss, and I happened to come across Jimmy's posting something on Facebook, and it was like a gift from Allah. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. He was writing all about how he had the plan to do exactly this. And here I am looking for somebody who was going to do this. And so it was just a perfect opportunity. We just met each other at the exact right time. And then what did it take, Jimmy? Like, just honestly, less than a month before we had this thing up and running. Like, we just ran with it because both of us were so eager to do this. And I had so many people that were already waiting, that I was already talking to. And so there was a definite dire need for Jimmy's support. And so I was very, very grateful to find him. And yeah, and then once it got started, I walked away, and now I'm in the background, and Jimmy's the one that's that's doing all the hard labor. So I'll let you take it from here, Jimmy. Let us know how things went for you.
Sure. So I think similar situation. So I was kind of thinking about actually. So when I was thinking about doing this work, I was like, I'm really well embedded in the ex-Muslim community in the UK. So I work with Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain. I'm a committee member for Faith to Faithless, which works across apostate groups. And also more latterly, since the secular conference, which we had last year, we now have an international ex-Muslim coalition, which has representation from countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Norway, all across the globe, really. So, and then ex-Muslims of North America as well. So I was actually thinking about doing this work in the UK with ex-Muslims in my community who I know, who need support and coaching to get through that journey. Because I think what often happens with our activist organizations is actually they afford a community, and we might bounce ideas off each other when we come into groups as groups of ex-Muslims. But what you don't have is someone systematically with you over a duration of time, say maybe 6 or 8 weeks, who's working with you to navigate this tumultuous journey that you're going through. So my thinking was, okay, great, I'm going to set this up and we're working in the UK and I'm going to make a difference in my community. Then I spoke to Yasmine and she was like, actually, if we look at the priorities here, the priority is not us who are living this privileged life in Western countries. It's really looking at ex-Muslims in Muslim majority countries. And Yasmine, when you first said it, like for me, there was some agitation there around, no, but I want to help my local community. But actually, the more she talked about it and the more we unpicked the situation of ex-Muslims in Muslim majority countries, and we're like, actually, if they want to go and speak to somebody, they haven't even got this option of being transparent with a medical practitioner or a mental health practitioner or a coach or anybody else. Because
sometimes
it could
even their own
literally,
spouse.
yeah, or their families or anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So frequently they haven't got anyone to talk to about what they're going through, and are in a space where they just don't know what to do. So we agreed that, you know, for my part, reluctantly, I guess at first, I reluctantly agreed that, okay, look, this is the priority. This is where we need to do our work, and these are the people we need to be reaching out and supporting. So I just like to clarify that actually I'm not a counselor or psychotherapist. I am a life coach, and my work is very much action orientated. So we were discussing about actually the space that we want to create for people is equipping them with tools so that they can move their lives forward in a direction, which is very different to psychotherapy or counseling, where that's a lot more talking about reflective work and maybe offloading what it is that you're going through. So this was about equipping people with the limited resource that we have in terms of time to get them into a position where they were more empowered about their lives and able to move their lives into a direction where they had some hope and they saw a future for themselves.
Okay, that's I just want to touch on that for a second, if you don't mind. Like, I work up in northern Canada, so I work a lot with the Inuit, and this is a little off topic, but when you said that giving the people the tools to do it as opposed to just talking about it, that's one of the things I noticed up there. There was a lot of stuff done to the Indigenous people in Canada, and I say that all the time. It's like, don't go up there and just shovel money or whatever at them. Give them the tools, so it's, instead of just saying you're always a victim, give them the tools to say, okay, you know what, you're not going to victimize me anymore. And
Yeah.
so if that, like, so that's something along the lines of what you're trying to do, or is that?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think completely. I think we were both very much aligned with this, right? We were like, actually, we want to get people to be able to stand up in their lives and be able to take account for it. I think for me, and I guess, you know, we're a whole bunch of ex-Muslims here, so there's something about my practice of my religion that had me be a victim, if I'm really transparent about that. So actually, something in our culture, in our Islamic culture, and I think we see this manifest in so many different ways. When being wrong is linked to punishment and eternal damnation, the ability to distance ourselves from anything we have responsibility for because it went wrong has to be a necessity. So if something goes wrong, you know, too much in our community, we're like, oh, that wasn't our fault. It was because of X, Y, and Z. blah, 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 blah. And I think that's a manifestation of actually, because if we say I did something wrong, then you have to say that I did this wrong, and that counts in your bad book of angels, and that brings you closer to hell. So, and for your viewers who might not understand what I mean by that, in Islamic theology, we are taught that we have an angel on our left shoulder and an angel on our right shoulder. The one on your right shoulder is writing down all your good deeds. The one on your left shoulder is writing down all your bad deeds. So if you start saying, I did this wrong and I did that wrong, then you are accumulating misdeeds. So there's something in our culture, Islamically, that has us push away from responsibility when things go wrong and see ourselves as victims of external actions. And I want to challenge that. And I know that when I stepped into my own understanding that actually I'm responsible for my life and I can have change around it, that was when I was able to move my life forward.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jimmy, because I know probably the rest of you guys as well. We got told things like it's maktub, that means it's written, or it's nasib, it's, you know, it's what's going to happen. What Allah wants to happen is what's going to happen. You don't have any control over your own life. That sound familiar to you guys?
Yeah, it's a al-qadar and al-qadar, you know. So
Yeah. Oh my God, this is so nice to hear. So we had like is kismat, is kismet, is kismat. Like it's written. That's things like how much money you will earn is kismat. Whether you will have a good house or a good job is kismat. You know, like, so what's the point of trying? Like, what
exactly.
is suffering from depression is kismat, or the devil is whispering in your ear. So, you know, this is the reason that you're having that. All you need to do really is pray more, and then cross your fingers a little bit.
And it's confusing.
Pray more, cross your fingers, see what happens.
Sorry, what was that, Deen?
I was just gonna say it's confusing because if everything is the will of God, then this conversation is the will of God, and like everything just becomes like, you know, God fighting God. It's like what, like.
Yeah,
unless something bad happens, then it's your fault.
This conversation.
Or the devil's. It could be the devil's fault if something bad happens.
Yeah, the devil made you do it.
Yeah, the devil made you do it. He's whispering.
But even that is qadar, technically.
Exactly. Even that is not out of your control. You know, something good, God willed it. Something bad, the shaitan made you do it. So you're just useless.
And people are people are less in control of their own lives than God is in reality, like from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah.
And I think with myself, because I left home, and I mentioned it on Vidu's thing, is I didn't know what an ex-Muslim was. I didn't know what the fuck. I knew the Arabic word. I knew I was murtad, and I was like, but I didn't want to have anything to do with Muslims. And I had this victim complex for so long. And then all of a sudden, when I started meeting ex-Muslims, I realized, no, I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor.
Yeah.
And when you have that change, it's liberating, and you need to see someone.
I'm just curious, like, because like Jimmy, like I know you're saying that it's more like life coaching and stuff. Did that make it easier in Muslim majority countries to approach people? Because I mean, the stigma attached with getting psychological aid or counseling in Muslim countries in the Muslim community, like, you know, apart from being an apostate, you have that additional stigma attached onto you. So approaching it as a life coach, or, you know, how to better yourself without attaching.
How does that work? So I think what happens, Yasmine, and let me know if you agree, is that the people who tend to come to the scheme, who approach it, are kind of at their wits' end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very much people who are at their wits' end, and they're like, I need some help. I need someone to talk to, and actually, you know, I need to get more power in my life. I need to be able to live my life. So it's people who are searching for a way, which is always a good sign, right? Because if they're approaching Yasmine, it means they want change in their life. They're not approaching her because they want the status quo. And that already is, I guess, our building block. Would it be useful for me to talk through some of the types of stuff that comes up for people? Would that be helpful to help you?
Yeah, for sure.
And,
great. Okay, so
if you don't mind, like, I mean, if you can talk to, obviously, you know, as generic as you can, or like, you know, without getting into too many specifics, personal details, but, like, maybe like even tips that if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I've been going through that, how do I avoid, like, you know, getting into the same kind of traps or something?
Yeah, sure. So okay, so there's, and so some of the themes are like, if your audience is ex-Muslims, and for you guys, some of these themes are just going to be so apparent, and will really resonate with them. So one of the chief things that comes up, and definitely comes up by the point people have reached out to Yasmine for the scheme, is this withdrawing from society. So this position of I'm an ex-Muslim and actually nobody else around me, because I'm in a Muslim majority country, is an ex-Muslim, and they're already practicing, and every sentence ends with inshallah, which goes back to being a victim, by the way. But let's not revisit that. So every sentence ends with inshallah, and it's endemic in our culture, it's endemic in our language. So this causes a lot of ex-Muslims to start retreating into themselves. And what that does is have them experience a sense of isolation. And that also manifests in their relationships with their families as well, because they're not out to their families. So all of a sudden they're withdrawing from their circle of friends, they're withdrawing from wider society, and now they're also withdrawing from their family members. So they might not be answering phone calls to their family members who want to meet up, or they're living in the same house as their parents, but they're not really interacting with parents and siblings in the way that they used to. So one of the things that we do is then start looking at actually what is the impact of that isolation, and that has a resounding impact on their health and their well-being. So that can lead to things like depression. Isolation leads to depression, can lead to anxiety, and often a really heightened sense of paranoia that any moment now I'm going to be found out, and then what? When I'm found out in a Muslim majority country, then what? So the work that I do is working with these people, and I think one of the benefits that I have working in an international context with International Ex-Muslim Coalition is having these links into ex-Muslim organizations all across the world, is start working with these people and coaching them to start building a community of their own. And often actually when we start our work, they haven't got the courage to make those steps. So we give them 6 sessions that we work over, which is often over a 7 or 8 week period. But by the end of that, we want to be in a place where these individuals have now got reached out into other ex-Muslim communities across the globe. And for some ex-Muslims, that's not a problem, right? So there's some people in Pakistan who tap into ex-Muslim social media interactions. But for the people who come to the scheme, they're usually in a different place to other ex-Muslims. There are heightened paranoia, heightened isolation, and are afraid to even take those initial steps. So how do we encourage them or work with them so that they generate, things like Facebook profiles that are anonymous, so that they can then start entering into conversations with these groups? And that leaves them in a place where they're no longer feeling like they're the only one. They're no longer feeling like they're broken. And sometimes even things like, oh my God, maybe I will be able to get married. Like there's other people like me. Maybe I'll be able to have a family. Maybe I'll be able to get married and have kids. Because that's something that comes out of the isolation, is actually this idea that for the rest of my existence, I'm going to be all alone.
Yeah.
In addition to that, sorry, did you want to add in?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's really valuable work, because for ex-Muslims, a lot of us are coming from this place where we were heavily involved in the Muslim community, which is a really strong community, and then it's replaced by nothing, essentially. And I've had people who are atheists essentially say that they're so desperate for community, they're going to join like a Christian church just for the sake of having people around them once they left Islam. So I think this is such valuable work, making self-sustainable sort of communities.
And even just simply giving people hope, because hope is a powerful tool. And if you've lost all hope, that's where you want to give up. But if you can give people back that sense of accountability and control in their life and be like, look, you're in a shit situation now, but there is hope. You will be able to get through. So you will be able to survive. You're going to make it. I think that can do so much to someone's mental standpoint where they're sitting at right then.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. And I think, often there's a helplessness, like just this feeling of helplessness, and that my life is outside of my control. And working with people who are in that space to just set small goals, really small goals to achieve between this week and next week. And being able to do that consistently over an 8-week period really allows them to see, oh, hang on a sec, I can make change in my life and influence my circle. and see how things change when I put effort and action into them. So getting people in touch with that in a very small micro way at the start allows them to start seeing that they have the ability to influence their life in a more macro way, despite the circumstances that they are in. And so that also leads them to feel like, you know what, actually, I can make some change in my life. I can make bigger strategic plans about what I want to do with my life. Maybe I'll move cities. Maybe I'll move countries. Maybe I'll do X, Y, and Z. But initially, when they come to Yasmine, that ability to see a vision or a future full of hope has been absolutely decimated because they've been isolated for so long.
Just a quick thing on that. Yes, Yasmine, when you get the messages from people, like, are they just contacting you through social media, or are they now contacting you through the website of the organization, or like now are they contacting maybe local groups, like ex-Muslim groups in their communities that reach out to you? Like, how does it happen?
They usually send me a message through my website, confessionsofanexmuslim.com. Quite a few people, maybe that's a good question, because I'd like people to know that I do not touch my Facebook inbox. There are, I've got thousands, tens of thousands of people there, so I cannot even look at that inbox. So if you're sending me a message in Facebook, please don't. Please go to my confessionsofanexmuslim.com and click on contact, and then send me a message through there, because I do receive those messages. But I do not look at my Facebook inbox unless it's my personal Facebook, but most people aren't there. So yeah, that's usually how they contact me. And now we have streamlined it so that they already know, like the people that contact me, like Jimmy was saying, they're ready to do this. Like, I'm just going to read a little bit from the testimonials that we have on our GoFundMe page, where there is one person that was saying that, when she says here, I remember when I saw Yasmine's post on Facebook regarding this campaign, I was thrilled. This campaign couldn't have come at a better time. I've been going through a very devastating period of my life, and all the strength I had was draining, and the trauma of 27 years of abuse and resistance took a huge toll on my happiness and personality, and the thing which was very threatening to my future and my chances of survival. I was feeling foggy in a cloud of depression, blocking my thoughts and my thinking. It always affected my self-worth and my self-esteem, and these things caused my anxiety to increase and affect my everyday life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she was exactly like Jimmy described, was already rock bottom. She was already looking for help, looking for support. And the message on my Facebook page just was, she just jumped at the opportunity. And if you go on to our GoFundMe page and click on updates, you'll see some testimonials from other people that have benefited from Jimmy's coaching. And they'll talk about what life was like before the 6 sessions and what life was like after. So, it's a real sense of, for me, it's very rewarding, even though I didn't do anything. Jimmy's the one who did everything, but it's so rewarding to see that, because I feel such a sense of accomplishment. Like, we have actually done something. We're not just sitting around and complaining and talking about it. And, that's important to do that, right? Because that shared misery is helpful, and it makes us feel like we're not alone in the world. But then the step after that is like, okay, what are we going to do about it? What's the next step? And that's what Jimmy offers through this program.
Yeah, and I think so. First of all, I would just like to completely poo-poo this idea that you're not doing anything, Yasmine. Like, it's without you, this would not have even got off the ground. So let's not be modest here. I think it's really important to acknowledge yourself for the figurehead that you are within our community. Actually, I'd even use that word. So it's no coincidence that you've stood up and that people have come flocking to come to us for help. So you should acknowledge yourself for that, and I certainly do, even if you don't, as well as very many others who do as well.
Well, thank you for that. But as far as the heavy lifting is concerned, the actual work, I'm not involved in the actual work, but I still take pride in the work that you do. So I'm really grateful for what we're able to do together.
Yeah, me too.
we'll definitely put up the link to your guys' GoFundMe page when we put out the video, so that people can reach out and help support the work you're doing. I was just curious, and Nulli and Deen, stop me if I'm kind of hogging all this. I'm just kind of curious if you guys are, like, let's say there's someone who's in a completely desperate situation, right? They can't even leave the house. Like, okay, let's talk about guardianship or whatever. So would you consider it a success if you got them to do one thing out of the norm? Like, okay, here's your life, and this is how your life is organized, and it's organized by outside forces for them, right? But if you can get them to break even just one thing, would you consider that a success? Or like what kind, like, how do you measure that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not measuring success by my standards. We're measuring success by the person I'm coaching and their standards, right? So when we look at your life, what do you want your life to look like? And how do we get you there? What actions do you need to take? And how do we support you through that journey? And so we have some dire situations that we're working with people in. But one of the benefits, I think, of both Yasmine and I being activists is that we're also embedded in other communities where we can signpost people to. So the people that I work with, by the time we've finished working together, have been signposted to other organizations, have either set up Facebook accounts, which are anonymous, and now all of a sudden they're talking to other people in other communities. So when they leave off with me, it's not like they're isolated again. They're left in this position where actually they've connected with other communities and will have a way to move forward. And that is really intrinsic to the work we do. In addition to that, so there's cognitive techniques that you can do that will elevate your mood and calm your anxiety. Yeah. However, when I work with my clients in my practice in the UK, and even when I work with clients in other Western countries, because they don't have to pray 5 times a day, like how we have to pray 5 times. When I train people on these cognitive techniques through this scheme, I'm like, oh my God, you did it how many times? Like people are just, it's like their new salah, right? Like, so they like, oh yeah, of course I can do this. I had to pray 5 times a day. And I'm like, oh my God, you are so disciplined around this. And you can see, Obaid, you can see in the start of when people talk about the space that they were in at the start of the 6 weeks when they came into session 1, compared to where they are at the end of session 6, because they've got a sense of discipline and routine that let's not lie, right? Islam will turn you into a robot in terms of discipline and routine. Like, it will really get you to adhere and do the stuff that you need to do. It just turns out it's not very good for you, right? But if you can equip these people who are that disciplined around praying 5 times a day with cognitive techniques that will elevate their mood and calm their anxiety, it's a wonderful transformation to see over an 8-week period. It really is. It really is.
That's good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Go ahead.
Can I say one other thing that comes up as a really consistent theme, which is a really interesting thing to look at, and I think we were talking about this a little bit before we came on live. So is this theme of sabotaging relationships with our family. So sometimes, and you can let me know about this for your own experience. So sometimes when we become an ex-Muslim and we're really clear that Islam is just a big fat lie, like it's just this big fat lie that you were systematically force-fed from like fetus to adulthood, and you completely internalized it, and there you were thinking that hot pus was going to be poured down your throat whilst your stomach exploded and then have your entrails fed to you, stuff like that used to really keep me up at night. There's a sense of anger that develops at being duped, and this is a consistent theme with ex-Muslims, and I think many atheists actually, across all faiths. So, but what often happens is that we are ex-Muslims within Muslim families, and all of a sudden we really want to share our knowledge with everybody else, regardless of whether they're ready for this news or not, right? Like, they may not be in the space of wanting to have even a discussion about the inadequacies of Islam. They may not want, their mindset is very much, Islam is perfect, Muslims are not, right? So forcing this conversation onto people who are not outside of that paradigm, who are within that paradigm and are not necessarily, there's a difference between engaging with somebody who wants to have the conversation and then battering somebody with your what they see as blasphemy around their head. Yeah. So often what we see with ex-Muslims is actually the inability to make that distinction that actually these people are still Muslim. They, like us, were very much they are within that paradigm. There's no other way of seeing the world. So coming to batter them with your logic is just seen as offensive and is seen as a barrage. So frequently with people that I'm working with through this scheme, and actually ex-Muslims that are not just in Muslim majority countries, is this sabotage and alienating of one's own family because they're not really in the space to have this conversation. So sometimes some of the people we started working with are in this place where they're almost about to lose their family. And then we have to have a conversation about, okay, look, how are you going to approach that? You didn't have a community of people to share your dialogue around apostasy with. If we can build a community for you over here to have these conversations with so that you feel self-expressed and you can get that all off your chest, like, these motherfuckers, they duped me for the last 25 years and they made me think I was going to burn. Like, you have to say that to somebody. You need to get that off your chest. But your mum and dad
are not the right people to tell.
I'm not the right people to say that to. And all of a sudden you're not answering their calls because you want to scream and shout at them. You're not speaking to your brother. You're not picking your nephew up from Arabic school. Like, all of this stuff is happening, but it's about having a conversation and then saying, okay, look, how do we approach this? Because you're about to lose your family, or you're about to lose your best friend who's been your mate for 20 years, who you love like he is your brother. How are you going to navigate this so that you don't sabotage those relationships? And I think that's a very important and nuanced piece of thinking that we as a community of ex-Muslims need to think about strategically, actually, because it does benefit us.
And I also, even contrary to the fact is, if you are constantly arguing with your parents, and I get messages all the time about it on Tumblr and that, and I'm like to them, look, stop arguing with your parents over prayer. At the end of the day, it's 5 times up and down. And if your sanity and safety is at risk by you arguing with your parents, just don't fucking do it. Find yourself another avenue. You can send me a message and it can be a 1,000-word essay of your anger. That's fine, but don't risk your safety, your sanity, and your family. Because I know as someone who has absolutely no contact with my family now, it's not worth it, that isolation, because you want, I look at myself now as am in my late 20s and I'm going to be having kids soon. I'm not going to have that connection with my mum anymore to offer me that support. And so it is incredibly vital to...
I do want to say something here, though, because I did do that for a long time, where I just listened and I did what I was told, even though I didn't want to do it and I was unhappy about it. And really, it was the never-ending story. There was always more.
What I'm trying to say is, if you are in a where you can't escape your home, once you leave and you can get out, that's fine. Live your life how you want. I am probably the most antagonistic person when it comes to my family. But if you are a 16-year-old kid at home, don't risk yourself for that.
Yeah, for sure. Totally.
But once you can get out, do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care.
Yeah, if you're dependent on someone, don't screw it up. Essentially.
Yeah, because you will lose, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'll be thrown into the real world, and you probably can't deal with it. To be honest, I can't. Mm-hmm. I'm still living at home.
Or if you're a girl, they'll force you into a marriage, or they'll send you back home, which is what happened to me. They just sent me to Egypt and left me there. So there are ways for them to force you to conform if you're still dependent on them. So yeah, I know, I agree with what you're saying, Nulli. It makes a big difference if you're dependent on them or not. But once you're able to stand on your own 2 feet, trying to appease them by still doing things that they want you to do, even though you don't want to do it, is really a waste of time, because it never ends. I mean, there was one woman I was speaking to who was pretending that her husband had become a Muslim. She herself has been an atheist for years, but she was marrying another atheist, and she was telling her parents that, oh no, he has converted to Islam. And I said, how long is this lie going to last? Like, what happens when you have children one day? Are you also going to lie about teaching your kids about being Muslim? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there has to unfortunately come a point where the Band-Aid needs to come off.
And the other problem is that if we're setting this standard where, like, if we're honest, your family must know at some level that you're not completely a Muslim. And if there's someone in that family, maybe a younger sibling, for me, it's certainly a younger sibling who has their doubts and has their problems with the Islamic community, if you shy away to the extent that you never say anything, you're setting this standard where no one in the future as well can't say anything, and there's no space for growth.
So I think, sorry, go on a bit.
Yeah. No, you go on. I kind of just trailed off.
Sorry, so I completely agree. And so this is what I'm saying is actually, I think it's a nuanced conversation, isn't it? So as somebody who's from the gay community and somebody who's from the ex-Muslim community, like I was in 2 closets too many, right? Like that was not a pleasant experience. And that's one more than anybody, or there's 2 more than anybody ever needs to be in. So I agree. But what I understand is that as somebody who's economically independent of my family, I can be whoever I want to be, as authentically as I want to be. And I can really step into myself and into who I am as an individual.
And you're in a safe, secular country too.
Exactly that. So this is about having, and like I said to you, this is not about my benchmark for what is an authentic life for you, or this is not about my benchmark about what's safe for you. It's about a conversation that we have with the people on the scheme around, okay, look, you're pushing your family away from you, you're isolating yourself. How do you manage to have a relationship with these people and have an outlet to other people where you can talk about your apostasy so that you don't lose your family? Because like Nulli said, a lot of, Nulli, for myself, for 10 years, I had no contact with my family. I was disowned. And actually, that was a very challenging time and heartbreaking. It was very heartbreaking for me to go through that. And all kinds of maladaptive behavior, all kinds of relationship issues in my life were shaped because of this foundation of abandonment issues that happened because of it. So I don't want anyone to go through that, but it's about working with people on the scheme to say, this is the situation you are in. How do we optimize for you the situation so that it works for you, so that you have an outlet with a community where you can talk about your apostasy? And now that you're doing that, what does your relationship look like with your family, where it works for you and it works for them? And getting them clear on that and shaping that relationship. One of the other things that I do is really working with people to understand motivations of their family. So when my family found out that I was gay, a lot of that being disowned was a coercive method to make me say, okay, guys, I'll come home, I'm straight.
Like, yeah, I'm straight. I was just kidding. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. It's oh shit, that hurt.
I'm over my phase.
Just a phase. Yeah. So a lot of that, oh god, I laughed too hard at that because it hit quite deep, right? So like it's just a phase. So so a lot of that is a methodology. That coercion is a methodology to make you come home and conform and be straight. But the motivations for my family around that were not sinister. It wasn't about we want to control him for being controlling's sake. That was, from my mum and my dad's perspective, was very much about our son is going to burn in hell for eternity. Mm-hmm. Like we can't let this happen. Anything that we have to do to manipulate him into going to heaven has to be done.
They kill you out of mercy. Well, not your parents, but homosexuals in general. Islam says that. Yeah.
You say that, but when I was gay, I used to believe that gays had to be killed. As an act of mercy, I used to believe this myself. So, because if we let them live for too long, then they might have too much gay sex, and then they were definitely going to hell. But if you caught the gays early and you executed them, then at least there was a chance that they would go to heaven because they hadn't maybe sodomized by that point, right? So understanding that I know that's so heavy, guys. I know that's so heavy. But understanding that the perspective of that is one of is one of love. It's just very twisted.
Yeah, it's a
It's just
warped sense
twisted.
of parenting in like, you
Yeah.
know, like I had that same instance with my family as well. When I first left home, it was that like, it was like, no, we want what's good for you, we want the best for you. Like, come home. It doesn't matter that you're fornicating and you're sleeping with a white man. Like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We'll come home. It's okay. Allah will reward you. Just repent. He'll forgive you. And it is coming from a place of in their own version of love and care. So I definitely agree with
Yeah,
that.
but it's
So when
like
you see that,
no, but
so
it's
Obaid, let me just close this point off. So when you see that, when you understand that actually, because we get really frustrated with our mum, we're getting really frustrated with our dad, we stop picking up the phone to them, we stop answering their calls, and then we start isolating ourselves more as ex-Muslims. But when you understand that your mum and dad are doing this crazy ass stuff from a position of love, you're a lot more able to roll your eyes while they're doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you see them, they're not trying to F you up. They're not deliberately trying to F you up. Actually, what they're trying to do is try and bring you onto a path where you will be in the glory of Allah. Like, you'll get to sit by
I
his side.
mean, hashtag not all. Let's
Yes.
just-
Yes.
but I mean,
Completely. Hashtag no. Completely. Some people are narcissistic. Some people are manipulative. Completely. And
Yeah, some
again,
parents.
nobody
Yeah.
knows your family like how you do, right? So when I'm working with people, it's about them identifying these things and them understanding it.
But yeah, so I've quite a good example of it. For instance, myself, with me and my family, we've just basically gone, nope, we're not going to agree on anything. It's better if we just kind of stay out of each other's lives, just for the sake of everything, and also because they're psychotically religious. But just because of my terrible experiences with my own family, if an ex-Muslim friend of mine tells me she's going to go meet her parents for the first time in 2 years, I'm not going to stop her. I'm going to be like, look, be careful. I'll, keep in touch with me while you're there. I'll do anything, but I'm not going to discourage that connection with your family because, this one particular friend of mine, she left home and she lost contact with all of her siblings and her parents, and she was from a very close-knit family, but now she's slowly rebuilding that relationship. And it can happen. I know so many ex-Muslims who have wonderful relationships with their parents because their parents have overlooked the religion. And they want what's best for their child and they want their child to be happy. And it is possible. But again, not all parents.
Yeah. I think also, so let me speak from my personal experience on that. And so I was disowned because I'm gay. And actually, when they found out I was gay, you're automatically not a Muslim, right? So it's like, oh my God, you're an apostate and you're not Muslim. And then everything was cut off. I mean, hats off to my mum and one of my sisters who tried to stay in touch with me. And when they tried to stay in touch with me, they got a lot of me picking a fight with them on the phone every time they tried to stay in touch with me, because I was like, you fuckers, how could you let me get kicked out of the house? Like, I would never say that, right? But underneath everything, it was like, where were you when they were kicking me out? Where were you when I was getting threatened? There was threats about getting hitmen on me, really crazy ass shit stuff that just hadn't existed.
How old were you at the time, Jimmy? Like, were you financially independent? Were you able?
Thank Allah, I was financially. Thank Allah, I was in a full-time job. So I was 23 when I was thrown out of the house. But sometimes I don't know you guys. Sometimes I feel like a 23-year-old Pakistani Muslim is like a 16-year-old white guy. Of their lives, right? Like, you've been completely sheltered from everything. You're not out in the real world. Men are not supposed to wash dishes or iron clothes. When I had to go out into the outside world and do I haven't got a Muslim wife to wash my clothes and iron my clothes. What the fuck am I supposed to do now, right? Like, oh gosh. And so having
get
to
one
learn
from Pakistan. That's it.
Yeah. What I needed was your scheme, your new scheme that you were talking about earlier. So I didn't know what to do, right? So, but I was very lucky because I was able to speak to my employers. I was working part-time at that point, and I said, listen, I'd like to go full-time. My employers, I said to them, listen, I'm getting death threats. They're saying to me, because I worked for an organization called Ann Summers, which is a women's lingerie shop, but it also sells adult toys. Yeah. So so they were opening a new store, and like around this time they were opening a new store, and they said, we want you to be the store manager of this store. Actually, your performance is so good that we want you to take the store. And I was like, this
You know
store
the
is
products
nice.
really well, Jimmy.
guys, like the amount of lingerie fittings I've done, which I wasn't supposed to because I'm a guy, but the girls didn't care about it. Yeah, for me. So my family found out I was gonna, not only am I a flipping gay ex-Muslim, but I'm also now working essentially in what they see as a sex shop, which is opening in their neighborhood, and I'm the store manager. And they put a big poster up of me.
Wow.
They put a massive post up of me, Yasmine, and and because and they had some quotes about, come and work for our company, it's absolutely amazing, and and then it had the logo of the company underneath, right? Okay. Because I was a really good employee, and they wanted to take quotes from us about why it was so great to work there. So when that happened, I started getting messages through my sisters from my brothers about, we're going to hire hitmen to take you out. And I grew up in a very aggressive, misogynistic family where there was violence towards, there was just violence all the time, directed predominantly towards women. So seeing women who were quite vulnerable being beaten up by men was a very regular occurrence for me. So when these threats around hitmen were coming up, they were very real to me. Like I would walk to work thinking, is this going to be the day? Is that somebody shoots me or kidnaps me or whatever? But 10 years on from then, one of my brothers passed away. And traumatic incidents like that tend to make people reevaluate what's important. And in addition to that, in 10 years' time, I grew as a person, and my family grew as individuals as well. So I went home for, when my brother passed away, I went home and I met with my other siblings again, who I hadn't really spoken to for however very long. And now we have relationships in place. I mean, are they the best relationships ever? No, they're not. Are we working on them? I have a wonderful relationship with my mum and my sister again. Like, that's absolutely awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, and in some ways I'm like, I get to choose who my family is now. Like, I'm like, you're normal, we can speak. Yeah. You guys are a bit misogynistic and you're a bit too religious, and actually we can just be hi-bye sort of people. So there is hope. Things do change, people do grow. There is hope. And I always say this to people who are coming out to their families, like, it might go horribly wrong. It really might. But that doesn't mean it will always be that way. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And like, my mum's on Facebook now, like in pictures with me and stuff, right? With me trying to wear her dupatta and stuff, and like, she knows I'm an atheist. She was telling me about, I tried to go vegetarian last year, and she was like, I did go vegetarian last year for a whole year. And then, when she was like, oh, eat some meat, and I was like, no. And for Muslims, not eating meat is
it's like being an atheist.
It's like, okay. Like, it's like as bad as that.
You've got them all.
She looked at me of like, oh, but Abraham was taking his son up the mountain, and then he was about to execute his son, and then God put a lamb there, and I was like, Mum, just hold on, hang on. How comes God couldn't put a pumpkin? And then we're talking like pumpkin. Or like a watermelon, because watermelons are good for you. Like, why couldn't we do that? Like, my mum would just crack up now and laugh at me when I'm having these blasphemous conversations with her. So things can change. People do grow. #not all.
Yeah. But that's a great story.
Just getting back to one thing, just like when you're talking about like when they do stuff and it's from their way of thinking, it's out of love, right? But it's kind of like everything else that's done. It's passive aggressive love. Like, it's nothing straight out. Like, they won't tell it to you straight out. They'll say, I love you. I love you so much, I'm going to cut off my own arm, or just insane things like that.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, emotional blackmail. Yeah, so I don't know. So for me, when I was gay, my mum the first thing was obviously she was going to kill herself, right? That was the first thing.
Cover herself up in lighter fluid and light herself up on fire. That's a common.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I'm like, that's maybe just their vernacular. Like,
I know. Maybe you tell normal people this, and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, it's normal. It's just..."
like, yeah, that's how we talk in our community. It's like, but it goes, and this comes all the way back to like this absurdity, these absurd things that we say in our community. They go hand in hand with this distancing yourself from any responsibility, don't they? Kind of like it's just another part of our culture. It's like when we do something wrong, it wasn't me, it's not our fault, it's the Jews. Like it's not me. It's not me, it's not our fault. Like things like, okay, let's say homophobia in Pakistan is nothing to do with Islam or Pakistanis. It's
a propaganda.
Yeah, like so when I'm talking about homophobia, and the British came over to Pakistan, they implemented homophobic laws. Yes, they did. But if you think that the reason they're killing gays in Pakistan now is white people, fuck's sake, get a clue. Like really, get a grip. Like it's not about that.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, like, okay, when you said culture, and like, Yasmine, you can blame Ali for this, like with his atheist Muslim, like you talk about, like people talk about Muslim culture, and there is no such thing. But I've seen people, from Middle East, like I'm from India, people from other parts of the world who are Muslim, and they have that kind of running theme, like if you don't do this, I'm going to kill myself, and if you leave the faith, we're all going to die. Is that Muslim culture? Like emotional blackmail from the family?
Maybe.
It's completely, it's like, like we have like a master's in emotional blackmail, everyone is born with a master's, especially the women as well. I think one of the other things, I'm not sure about Arab culture, so I'd be keen to hear, or Persian culture. So I feel like, this isn't a sociological study that I've done. I feel like power exists within the hands and grasps of men. So the reins of power in Muslim communities, like when Western feminists talk about the patriarchy, I'm a bit like,
you're like, honey, you have no idea.
Right? Yeah, like guys, you have no, and I literally believe, Yasmine, they have no idea, because particularly if you're 20 something now in the West as a woman, like, and I'm not saying there's no patriarchal structures in the West, but I'm saying like you don't understand what it's like until you've been to Muslim communities. So because power exists in the hands of men, like direct power, the ability to make decisions, the ability to make economic decisions on what money gets spent on, all of that resides in the hands of men in our community and in our families, that the exertion of female power exists within this realm of manipulation. It's a really hard thing to say, actually, and I don't think I've ever said it in public before. So for me, the shaping, particularly in Pakistani Asian communities, of women's power is done through manipulation and done through coercive techniques, like I'm going to kill myself, or I'm not going to talk to you anymore, or I'm going to go back to Pakistan, I can't live here anymore, this is too much. Things like that, because they don't have the direct ability to make choices and take action. Like if a man wants to take action in our community, he'll get in his car and he'll go and do something. You'll be lucky if, of my mum's generation, you'll be lucky if the women even know how to drive or speak English. So they can't make direct action in the same way that men do. So they have to make action through manipulative techniques that often need to influence the men to take action that they want them to take.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That was quite
totally makes sense.
I would agree with that as well, because I've said something similar on lines of, obviously in a lot of Muslim households, there's a lot of violence, particularly towards disciplining the children. And something I've noticed when I've seen to a lot of ex-Muslims is because our mothers don't have the power, but they also don't protect their kids. So a lot of the time they'll go like, it would be like the dad would come home and be like, oh, Yasmine didn't obey me today. And they're trying to have some power in that sense of me. And so like, it's something I did confronted my mother about. And I'm like, you were a convert. You grew up in Australia. You were in the era of, the rise of second wave feminism. Yet you allowed my stepfather to beat the living shit out of me. Why would you do this? And she couldn't answer me. And it was about down to the fact that it gave her a semblance of control in her small world that was the house, the four doors and the roof.
I think also challenging, for your mother to directly challenge your father then surrenders her opportunity for power later on. Do you understand? Because if as women, you only access power through men, so if you're only able to access things through your husband, then if you directly challenge your husband, you're more likely to get cut off from that access to power. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely do agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes that's what it's about. I mean, to be fair, like my mum, she was, she wasn't one of the, in the Bollywood movies where you see the woman get slapped and they're like, oh, she wasn't. My mum was like fighting back. I was like, oh, mom, like, so I feel blessed to have grown up around women.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my family, sorry.
Carry on.
Okay. In my family, my father's usually the emotionally sort of manipulative one. He's the one who but he's also physically like abusive as well. But I don't know, like yeah, I guess the point is just that it's not always along those lines, but yeah.
No, hashtag not all. I'd hashtag not all that as well. Also, hashtag not all Muslim families have violence in them at all. So, but I think.
But it's a pretty common theme.
It's a common thing.
Yeah.
Well, how many of us on this talk, right? So there's 5 of us here. How many of us can we say that there was violence in our house? Is it 5 out of 5 or?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah,
5
I would.
Obaid, was you a yes or no?
Me? I'm a definite yes. Yeah.
No, you're definitely yes. I didn't even ask you yet. Like, I was asking Obaid, like Obaid, was yours a yes or no?
Oh yeah, no, I for sure from my side as well. It was more towards myself and my brother, not my sister so much. No, I don't think my dad ever laid a hand on my sister. It was myself and my brother only.
Was she the youngest?
Yeah, she was the youngest.
Okay, I have this theory.
Okay, go ahead.
That when it comes to the youngest, your abusive parents realize that they fucked up with everyone else, and this is like their last opportunity to be a decent human being, so they ease up on them. And
except I was the youngest. I'm always the hashtag not all. Whatever the shitty situation is, Yasmine was in it.
Underneath what says Apostates speak up, Heretics Corner, Apostates speak up. Can you put hashtag not all just in that so that everything they say is couched by that hashtag? So I was the youngest of 7, and yeah, so there was still like, I think some of it is about actually our parents grew up understanding that was how you parent, right?
That's right. That's what it was.
That's how you parent.
There was no opportunity. I mean, Deen, you're talking, if somebody were to do that, that would require them to do some sort of self-reflection beforehand.
Yeah.
And I do not believe that my mom has ever sat down and thought about what she's doing and what the consequences of her actions are. I think she just keeps going.
But I think
to be honest, I think, well, that happened in my family anyway. Is honestly my youngest sibling. My father's never laid a hand on her, but everyone else, we've been through the same constant abuse.
See, I always had this theory with my family. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I just feel like my dad got too old.
Maybe.
It's too tired.
Yeah.
I think also, and this is not just in Muslim families, but I think in any family. So for me, yes, I don't know if this was the same for you. I don't think it was, but for me, all of the rules that we had, like you can't have friends call the house. You can't, and if you're a boy, you could. So first of all, no one can call the house. Actually, before that, you can't have friends. That was the first thing. Just can't have friends. That's not okay. No one should have any friends. And then when that got eroded by like my eldest brother, then it was like, okay, you can have friends, but they can't call the house. And then another brother eroded, my oldest sister would have eroded that rule because a female friend would have phoned for her. And then the next sister would have eroded that a bit more. And then another brother would have eroded, your friends can't come to the house. So by the time they get to the 7th child, like I was allowed to have girls call the house for me. Exactly. A girl could call on the house phone and call for me. And one time, oh my God, one time 5, because obviously all my friends were girls, right? Like they were not boys, they were all girls, right? Because that's how gays are usually. So 5 girls came and knocked at my door once. I literally didn't know what was going to happen that day. I was like, Dad, can I go with my friends? He was like, no, you can't go out. Shut the door now. And then the girls all walked
You know
off.
what? You should have just told your dad you were gay, and then he would have felt safe.
They're gay.
Speaking with some
That
friends about
saves you
this,
from all the trouble.
Dad, Brad is
all the
staying
girls
over. Like, can you imagine just like, Dad, Brad is staying over tonight. We're gonna.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, again, that is quite. It's quite funny because for me, it was the opposite reaction. So I was the eldest, and when I rebelled and did the dirty sin of leaving the house and not returning and becoming an ex-Muslim, my family became more strict on my siblings, so shipped them off to Somalia and left them there forever. But then my best friend, one of my really good friends, she left home. She's an ex-Muslim. She's open about it. Her family are like, oh, well, we don't want our other kids to leave, so let's be nice to our other kids, and we're going to let them go out. They can have friends. We're going to let them date. We're going to let them do everything because we don't want them to leave Islam. So we'll let them do everything else, but not to leave Islam.
I guess it could go both ways, because I know another girl who, once she left, her sister that was remaining was 13 years old, and they actually sent her to Somalia to get married at 13 because they were just too afraid of leaving her in America and that she might follow her sister's footsteps.
Like in my family, it was, in my family, it was a little weird. Like I said, my brother and myself, like a dad hit us, but with my sister, it wasn't so much the physical. It was, they gave her freedom when she was older. So, she traveled a little bit when she was in her late teens, and then she went and did a semester at the Sorbonne University. But in her younger years, and when she was a younger teenager, they didn't specifically tell her not to have friends or anything, but it was always like, oh, you have to be a good girl. You have to be a good girl. You have to be a good girl. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. So they manipulated her. So there wasn't so much the violence, which, okay. And even then I want to it wasn't like, my dad beat me every day or anything like that. Like, he would get upset, he would get mad, and then every now and then I would get a beating, right? It wasn't like continuous every day or anything like that. But with my sister, it was manipulating it. So she was thinking she's doing this of her own accord type of thing. And it was, I think that was worse than what my brother and I got.
Yeah, it's insidious, isn't it? It's really insidious. I think for me, one of the most, I don't know, I hate to use the word entertaining, but actually looking back now it's entertaining. At the time, it certainly wasn't. So obviously, I don't know what you guys are like, but interracial marriage for us as Pakistanis, like, that is some next level shit. We're not really there yet. People, like, we're on the slow train. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're in economy class coming up behind you on the interracial marriage. So, but of course, like, interracial marriage is nothing compared to your son being gay and ex-Muslim, right? So after I get thrown out of the house, like, I don't know, like a week later, my brother comes home and says, "Hey, here's my black son." Like, he's like 2 years old. Like, and by the way, I've got a black girlfriend. Like, none of you.
He felt safe at that point to share.
Obviously at that point, like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, at that point, at least you're not gay and ex-Muslim.
Interesting, because a friend of mine who's from Bangladesh, that actually happened to her too, because her brother was dating a woman from Pakistan, and we're not dating, but like, they were both Muslims. So they were, they'd working together secretly in love, but they didn't know what to do about it because I guess Pakistanis and Bangladeshis don't like each other very much. But then when my friend came out as ex-Muslim, same sort of thing. He brought the girl home and he's like, "I'm going to marry her." And they're like, whatever.
But when you're talking about the interracial thing, like especially with the blacks, like I said, my family I grew up in India and my family was there. I remember my grandfather, before we moved, like, I moved from India when I was 6, my family moved from India when I was 6, but before we moved, if I was misbehaving, my grandfather would threaten me, "If you don't stop misbehaving, we're going to get that black girl from down the street to marry you off to."
Oh my God.
So bad.
Guys,
that's like Arab level
racism.
So
this is time to talk about the racism in our community, because we don't talk about this enough. Like, we really, like, in Islamic communities. So first of all, like, we're often hopping on about racism. Actually, structural racism is all about white people being racist towards ethnic minorities. But this is like that feminism thing we were talking about, about patriarchy. I'm like, you guys don't know
no
racism.
idea.
Yeah,
you
you
don't know
yeah.
racism.
You have got, we're still calling people Obaid, like as enslaved.
Yeah.
We're still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a natural part of our language to refer to a black person as Obaid if you're Arab. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
and
for
it's
me, as
unapologetic.
somebody,
Like it's not. It's just the way it is. Like of course
Yeah.
they are lesser people. What nobody even questions it. It's just accepted. Like they're not even at the point where they realize that that's not right. That we shouldn't be racist. They don't. There's no word for racism.
When
And
I was
sometimes
yesterday,
racist.
sorry, when I was yesterday morning, I had a call with Vito Vids, and
was awesome.
we made this joke about how white converts are like the highest commodity. So like it looks like it's better to put money on white converts than on Bitcoin.
Oh,
Yeah, it's true.
But I think they end up leaving quite frequently, don't they? Isn't it like 3 out of the 5 leave or something after 5 years? I can't remember how good the odds are. But we used to refer to black people as kala, which literally means black. So you would be like your kala friend, yeah? Like so somebody would
Your
say,
colored friend.
is how kala means black, so it would be like your black friend.
Okay.
So you might not refer to them by their name. Your parents might not refer to them by their name.
Mm.
They might just say, your black friend. Is your black friend coming for dinner? Is your
What if you have 2 black friends?
Oh, the worst with me was, okay, when I was a kid, I was...
Then you ask which one. after they say, is your black friend coming to dinner? Then you say, which one? Like, which one of my friends do you know?
But like I said, when I was a kid, I was a bad kid, and I used to page my dealer, and so my dealer would answer, and it happened to be a black guy, and my mom's like, just by the voice, she's like, oh, I could recognize by the voice it was Kalata is like a black person. It's like, stop saying that, Mom. Like,
So she doesn't care that he's selling you weed. She cares that he has black skin.
But it's quite fascinating what you were saying about the Arabization and that racism, because so my stepdad's Somalian, and when I was in Somalia, Somalians call themselves Arabs, and they are even so far, even inside themselves, they have it's not necessarily a caste system, but it's quite this internalized racism where I remember there was an occasion where this woman's father came and said, oh, I want your son to marry my daughter. And the family were like, no, she's duhul. And duhul it's the charcoal they use to light the fires. And like, she's duhul, she's black, and then they started making fun of like, her features. Like they said, oh, she's got a flat nose, she's got tight curls, she doesn't have straight hair. And it's so fascinating. And it directly correlates to the Arabization of Somalian culture, because before that never sort of happened in their societies. And my jaw hit the floor when I heard that. I was like, what? You called her charcoal? I was so offended.
And it's weird because like you're talking about someone who's a slight shade blacker than you. It's not like you're a white person talking about black people. You're like talking about someone just like a tinge darker.
No, but
that matters. So like in Pakistani culture, like if you're the dark, when I was at school, like people used to, like girls used to really want to go out and date me, like, but it wasn't because I'm gay, obviously. It was because I'm fair skinned, right? Like it was like he's fair skinned. The other Asian girls wanted to date me because of it's all colorism. Like the closer your skin color is to pale, the more beautiful you are. So it's a really insidious thing that's in our community.
Yeah,
but
very fair skin.
Don't talk about it enough.
No, but
I had great value in the Muslim community. I was worth a lot.
But in India and Pakistan, you also have the fair skin comes from, and it's also in some of the Asian things. It's if you worked as a farmer or you worked as a laborer, you worked outdoors, so your skin got darker. If you worked inside and you did a professional job, you had fairer skin. So fair skin sometimes meant prosperous, a better family. Okay,
Is that why they force niqab on women? Oh my God.
The thing is, though, that's I mean, who knows, right? But if we're all coming from different cultures and the thing that we all have in common is Islam, and this racism is in the religion. People don't want to talk about that, but it was. I mean, Muhammad referred to black people as raisin heads. He talked about the beautiful women in heaven that had skin so white, it was transparent. You could see their bone marrow and their organs and their veins because their skin was so white. That's how he would describe beautiful women. And what was it, Bilal, that when he was black, but when he went to heaven, he would have white skin because he was so good. So, you know, this kind of bullshit is embedded in the religion. So it's no surprise that followers of Islam, even if they themselves have black skin, like in Somalia, are going to internalize this racism against themselves. I mean, of course they didn't have it before. How could they have had it before? They're all black. Who are they comparing themselves to, right? But I think that's really the where this all stems from.
Completely, I agree. And I think, you know, when you talk about internalized things, we have a history, we have a current, actually it's not even history, we have prevailing norms of Islam having people internalize things. So Yasmine, we were talking about gay people being executed. And, you know, for me growing up, I thought gay people should be executed, even though I was gay. Like, that's completely internalizing your homophobia and heteronormative societal norms, right? And we see so many women in our community internalizing their own misogyny and policing other women by that misogynistic norms. And so it's the same with race. It's absolutely the same with race. And a friend of mine was tweeting on Twitter that every time she criticizes the racism in Islamic communities, some motherfucker always says, "Oh, but Bilal was black and he did the first
one guy."
And she's like, Muslims, you all better please know that is the equivalent of saying, "I've got a black friend." They're pointing out your bullshit story about Bilal was black. Like, that is literally the equivalent of, yeah, but I've got a black friend, I'm not a racist. It's time to move past that quick tokenistic statement and say, actually, you know, let's face it, why do we hate black people in our community? It really is a hatred. It's like, it's, if your daughter wants to get married to a black Muslim man,
and let's be honest, what Nulli was saying about converts, that's only for white converts. If you're a black convert, nobody, not, you might as well invest in Bitcoin. Nobody's interested. But it's the white converts that are a high commodity.
Yeah, we've got a lot of
even East Asian converts. Like, even if they're East Asian, like you might be Chinese or Indonesian or something, and you convert, although Indonesians are most Muslim. But if you're East Asian, anything but black really is like of value, right? But if you're a black convert, yeah, that's not front page news. You might get in the small back page of the Islamic Times on page 42. We might give you a sentence. But that front page is reserved for Fatima, who used to be called Becky.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what the front page is. Fatima, who used to be called Becky. Like,
we've already kind of used up quite a bit of your time, guys. I was just, if we wanted to just, like, we were thinking maybe we could just start wrapping this up. But I know you guys both have other stuff on the go. Like, I know you both have books. Like, Yaz, your book is coming out, and Jimmy, you just kind of had one come out. If you guys want to talk about that, and if you got anything you want to plug, or
do you want to go first, Yaz, or do you want me to go? When is your book coming out, Yaz? I'm like literally waiting.
I know, this is ridiculous. It's like my daughter was what's the word, when like my pregnancy she was overdue, and everybody, all my friends and family were like, "Oh my God, she's like the most." You know, the baby, when she was born, everybody was so excited because we've been waiting for so long. So I'm thinking to build the hype, you know, with my book too, like I did with my kid. But no, yeah, that's right. But no, hopefully it should be, things are moving along. I'm excited. Things are going well, but no actual date to announce yet. But I do have something else to announce.
Oh, yay.
And that it is that I have been working on a new project, which I'm also going to keep under the Free Hearts, Free Minds umbrella. So it's now going to be Free Hearts, Free Minds does two things. One of them is the counseling through the life coach through Jimmy that I've been talking about. And the other thing that we're going to start developing now is a marriage website. So what made me start to think about it was I was talking to women in Saudi Arabia, and there was specifically one woman in Saudi Arabia that I was speaking to. And she is in a very dire situation. Her family found out that she is atheist, and although she's living in Saudi Arabia, her family are Somalian, and her choices were, we're going to send you home to live with your family who are Boko Haram. So essentially they're going to try to bring her back to the faith. And if it doesn't work after 3 days, they kill her as per the religion states. Or she was to marry this man. And of course they chose an imam to marry her because they wanted somebody that was super religious that would bring her back into the faith. So those are her two choices. So no surprise, she is suicidal. And I have been trying, I mean, I worked with, Secular Rescue through the Richard Dawkins Foundation. I've had people try to bring her to Canada different ways. We've tried everything, but our countries, and it kind of, you understand why they're making this decision. So, I mean, it's everybody, UK, US, Canada, Australia, they've all sort of decided that if a woman is trying to escape a forced marriage, that's not good enough of a reason to seek asylum, because if they open that door, it's just going to be a never-ending onslaught. So they just don't accept that as a reason. So I had no way of helping her. And because of the guardianship laws in Saudi Arabia, she doesn't even have her own passport. She's a medical doctor. She has a medical degree, and her family won't let her practice medicine. They only let her practice cupping. Do you guys know what cupping is?
God.
Yeah, because Prophet Muhammad, because it's sunnah, right? So it's basically like this glass, you heat up this glass tube and you stick it on the skin and it sucks out all the bad energy or some bullshit. So she's a medical doctor and she's being forced to do this because it's sunnah. And so she actually could, that's what they're allowing her to work in, because she can't decide where she wants to work because of the guardianship laws there. And they take her money so that she doesn't use her money for bad, but she's still doing the job just because at least it gets her out of the house and it gives her some sense of purpose. But anyway, through my discussions with her, which has been for like a year now, we figured out that the best thing to do was to connect her with an ex-Muslim man in the GCC. So in that area of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, etc. And if she were to connect with an ex-Muslim man from that area, if she were to bring that man to her family, obviously not saying he's ex-Muslim, but just saying, here's a man that I want to marry, or him going to the family and saying, I'd like your daughter's hand in marriage. And then if she were to marry that man, he would now become her guardian. So basically ownership would pass from her father to her new husband. And he would give her permission to travel or to work where she wants to work, or, to get a driver's license. And even they could eventually, after a while, agree to divorce, or they could agree to leave Saudi Arabia together. Whatever the situation they decide to do together, the point is she can't do anything without a man doing it for her. It's her guardian, right? It's an open air prison, and every woman has her own personal prison guard. So we just want to get a good man to be that prison guard for this woman. And through talking about that with her, we came up with the idea of actually building a website where it could connect ex-Muslim men and women in those countries with those incredibly strict guardianship laws. And so it would give women an opportunity to free themselves. So of course, it's been a long process of figuring out how we're going to build this website. Not technically, that part is easy, but making sure that the people that we bring in are people that we have vetted and that we trust, because it's very high risk, right? In these countries, it's it's life-threatening if we get this wrong. So we have an ex-Muslim man, Saudi Arabian man, and an ex-Muslim Saudi Arabian woman on our team. And we have them there to help us with the vetting process. And we're going to go through rounds of interviews, and people in Saudi Arabia on the ground are going to connect with them face to face and make sure that we trust all the people before we allow them onto the site. And then letting people take it from there. So that's the new project that I'm working on, and I'm really excited about it, and it's going well. It hasn't started yet. I'm not ready to launch, but we're working on it.
Are you gonna start it like a Middle Eastern game show, like the Mideast dating game at the same time to run concert with their website?
Those would be so funny if we did that with Middle Easterns, because they don't even know each other, right? They do the thing where they lift up the card and it's like, what's his favorite food or something? They have no fucking clue. I don't know if I'm going to marry him.
And both the men and the women can have to wear niqab until the very end when it's revealed what they look like.
Yeah, that's right, because the men are at a disadvantage here. Right, their faces are showing, so she but they have no idea what she looks like under there. Gamble.
Just pick a number out of a hat. You number 22.
You can kind of take the two parts of Free Hearts, Free Minds, and you can funnel the people that Jimmy are helping into your dating site, into your marriage site.
That's an idea.
We did ask that question. That was a question that came up at one point, wasn't it? It was somebody. So we were looking at whether that was an opportunity for somebody at one point on the scheme.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It never ceases to amaze me how much aligned the journey of gay people is to the alignment of ex-Muslims. So for gays, particularly actually for gays of Muslim heritage, we have sham marriages. You'll get a gay guy and a lesbian woman who are both from the Muslim community, and then they'll get married, and to outward society and their families, they both look like this lovely couple. They might even have children, but they're both having relationships with, the guy's having a relationship with another man and the woman's having a relationship with another woman. So this fake marriage to as a method to gain other means, and survive is relevant to both communities. It's interesting stuff. Do you want me to talk about the book? Shall I go on to that?
Yes.
Cool. So I wish I could claim the book was mine. I mean, I love that introduction. Jimmy's got a book. It's great. That's not true.
You've got a chapter.
But one day, hey. So there is a gentleman named Fiaz Mughal, and he is the director of Faith Matters. He's a Muslim man. He's also heads up Tell Mama, which is a hate crime monitoring group for hate crime against Muslims. So Fiaz approached a lady named Aliyah Salim, who was the co-founder of Faith to Faithless, who was an ex-Muslim apostate. And together they decided to publish a book. And they approached me and asked me if I'd write a chapter in their book. So there's about 5 or 6 people in the book who have all written a chapter about their experience and reasons for leaving Islam. So for me, my experience of questioning Islam was very much a young age, maybe 11, 12, even younger, I think maybe 10, 11, 12, looking at the lives of my sisters and looking at my life and being like, this isn't fair. I think, at that age where the misogyny hasn't been internalized and there's this kind of utopian sense of justice we have as children, right? That I was looking at my sister's lives and I was looking at my lives, and it wasn't fair that they couldn't do things that me and my brothers could do. And I remember specifically, up to a certain age, we would always go to the cinema as a family, my dad, not my mum, but my dad and all of the kids, including my 2 sisters. But then somewhere it was deemed that they were too old to be allowed to come out of the house and go to the cinema with the rest of us. So they dropped off, and it was just me, my brothers, and my dad who would go to the cinema. And I was saying to my dad, how comes my sisters can't come? Because I was such a kid. I was like, how comes my sisters can't come? And we'd be going to watch some Disney thing like Bambi, right, in the cinema. And then I remember the advert for Coca-Cola came on, and on the beach there was a woman running in a bikini like Baywatch, and a guy in shorts running with her, like 2 lifeguards. And my dad was like, "See, this is why your sisters can't come, because they're not allowed to see things like this." Lord knows, I don't even know. Like, we're rather late in the podcast to start dissecting that Islamic logic, right? Like, so tune in next week, folks, for the dissection of that statement, because it will be a whole show. But so Aliyah and Fiaz wanted to get together and compile some of our voices around this. So for me, it was about gender norms and women's rights, and also about LGBT issues in Islam. And that's what my chapter speaks to. And for different people in the book, it speaks to different issues. But the reason I really got involved with the book was it's one of the first times, actually, I guess I can put it more succinctly, I'm so bored of this positioning of ex-Muslims versus Muslims as some sort of combative necessity that must exist and is going to be that way for all time. And to quote a friend, Yasmine Mohammed, who once said, and I use this everywhere I go now, "You do not care about Muslims more than we do." Like, whenever someone tries to act like ex-Muslims are trying to vilify or be anti-Muslim bigots or to generate racism towards our community, I just need to remind them, and it's usually Western liberals actually who are doing that, or other Muslims in our community who are Islamists. You do not care about Muslims more than we do. They are our families. You know, I still pass my mum her Quran if she wants it. I'll still put out the prayer mat for her if she wants to pray. Like, this is my community. We are components of the same community. This positing of us as enemies for each other for this infinite battle that must go on, which one of us must meet a demise in, is inaccurate. So when Fiaz approached Aliyah and I saw, oh my God, look, there's a Muslim who wants to work with ex-Muslims very openly, very transparently, I was like, this is a landmark book. This is a landmark book. So the book is called Leaving Faith Behind. It's edited by Fiaz Mughal and Aliyah Salim. It's available on Amazon now, so if you want to buy it, please do. And really, I invite your audience to engage in the dialogue of our community, because this is one community, and we're just navigating something that white people navigated years ago. You know, like, you can have a Christian mum and she has an atheist son, and everyone's still there at Christmas. And they're hanging out. And he might get married to a Hindu woman and they have some atheist children, and those children are fully integrated with their grandmother. It's not an issue. We can do this as a community too. We are big enough, we are bold enough, we are intelligent enough. We just need to start having these conversations and relating to each other in a way that isn't positing enemies. So go for it.
Yeah, so have you actually had any contact with like Orthodox Muslims, like very, very, like imams or sheikhs or anything like that, who are willing to work alongside you?
So for the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, they work with Muslim people, definitely. Perhaps not your most Orthodox people, but definitely secular Muslims. Secular Muslims are starting to get more on board with us, yeah? So the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain did a documentary which was directed by Dia Khan, I think it is. She's a Muslim documentary maker or filmmaker. So there are instances where we're working with these people, but not nearly enough, and it's definitely much more secular liberal Muslims who are more willing to work with us. But that's a beginning. You know, that's a beginning. And we need to get to a space where actually all walks of Muslim people are able to have the dissent in our community. So we don't have to agree about stuff, or we never will agree about stuff, right? But you have to get used to blasphemy if you're going to start acknowledging ex-Muslims in your community. Because if you ask us, well, why don't you believe in Islam? And we say, well, Muhammad had slaves and it's just not chill. Like, that's a blasphemous statement, right? If you're a Muslim. But the only way to get used to us in your community is to have these conversations and to develop a resilience as Muslims. Like, we have to, you're not fragile. We have to develop a resilience as Muslims to critique of our of the religion in our community. We really do. And, you know, if our parents can come from Pakistan, leave their whole families, come and live in another country where they didn't know anything, learn the culture, learn the language, our community is strong enough and adaptable enough to be able to adapt around ex-Muslims and Islam as part of their community.
So,
sorry, I was just going to say that, like, it's what you're talking about, they have to get used to the blasphemy. These aren't conversations that were, like you said, it's happened in the West, it's happened with Christianity, it's happened with Judaism. Muslims need to, I've always said that you don't need to reform Islam. Like, reforming Islam, I think, is a fool's errand. You need to change the way Muslims think. Muslims need to be allowed to say, we question this. Even if you're practicing and you say, okay, I question sex slavery. I question slavery, period. Muslims need to have the ability to question the tenets of their faith freely and without worry and without fear of harm, so that ex-Muslims and people who are very secular can also then come out and question freely. And it's something that's hugely lacking in the Muslim community.
Yeah, completely. I agree. And that needs to change. For me, that not changing isn't an option, actually. There's no option for the status quo to remain as it is within Muslim communities. It has to change. And, but I think for ex-Muslims, we are battling the far right, who want to capitalize on utilizing our critique of our community to fuel racism, and we are battling Orthodox Muslims and even moderate Muslims, right? Whatever that is, we're battling that as well. So I think you've not met people like us before. So you don't know what you're in for. Like, we're born fighters. And, if you throw into that being gay as well, right? We are born fighters. We will kick your asses. Change is coming. Get on board, or you're going to get washed away.
And that's exactly what they're afraid of, and that's exactly why they want to shut us up, and that's exactly why the law is to kill us, because of that exact reason.
Yeah, exactly.
But to your point, Deen, of or those Orthodox Muslims, as a person who grew up in a fundamentalist, Orthodox, conservative, whatever word you want to use, a very Muslim household, we wouldn't have even interacted with so-called moderate Muslims. They were worse than the kuffar because they pretended to be one of us. So we're talking about different, like if we go back to Sam Harris's concentric circles, we're dealing with like us as ex-Muslims. I have so many Muslim followers, honestly, and I have a lot of Muslim people who are just like, I have a lot of secular Christian followers too, who just want to have conversations or just interested in what I have to say or want to talk about it or whatever, question things. They're open-minded individuals. But to what you were saying, your point before that, Jimmy, was, so yeah, I have a lot of these secular Muslims, secular Christians, secular religious people following me, and we interact and we're all decent to each other. But my problem, the people that really fight me and the people that are really mean and the people that are really just useless for having a productive conversation are the people on the far left.
Yeah.
I've had one person on the far right, one person in my entire time on Twitter say to me, ex-Muslim, Muslim, who the fuck cares? You should be killed. All you people are the same. Once a Muslim, never a Muslim, that kind of garbage. But the far left, I cannot count to you how often I get called an Islamophobe, anti-Muslim bigot, Nazi sympathizer, yada, 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 yada. Muslims don't talk to me the way these, white saviors talk to me. So I think that Muslims, the ones that are secular, open-minded, moderate thinkers, they are open to the conversation. They understand that there are ex-Muslims and they're interested a lot of them have a lot of empathy too. They understand. They're like, oh, you had a really bad experience under Islam and I'm really sorry that happened to you, or whatever the situation is. But so I'm happy to see that bridge happening there. And it's just really weird that the bridge between liberals and other liberals is where the problem arises.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could
I feel
definitely
like
talk
you-
about
you-
that for hours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we were closing down.
Sorry.
Oh no!
No, no, no. Fine.
Sorry, just
Can
one sec. I
have we
gotta
got
get my
time for me to
doorbell.
touch on this? Cool. Have we got time for me to touch on this? I just think.
Sure,
of
go right
course.
ahead.
Sorry, guys. I realized that we were supposed to shut down, but you can't open that can of worms and then go. It just wouldn't be okay. So as you guys are aware, right? So the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, we marched in Gay Pride, and we were
Yes.
we were marching for predominantly our banners were addressing the death sentence for gays in Muslim majority countries. And specifically, we were talking about Chechnya because at that time,
Yep.
Chechnya is rounding up gays, right, into concentration camps. Like, of all things, like this is what's literally happening in the 21st century now. And there were stories coming back of gays being murdered and bodies being given back to people's parents and such. And so we marched in Gay Pride and we held up banners that said things like Allah is gay, which were provocative but also thought-provoking. So banners that said like Allah is gay. We also called out a couple of mosques. So we called out East London Mosque, which is a bastion in London in the Muslim community, but have hosted some really nefarious preachers who have come to the mosque. And one of them held a presentation and it had Spot the Fag and it had like Elton John on one side and Tupac on the other. Like in a mosque in the UK, Islamic preacher put slides up on the screen saying Spot the Fag with a picture of Elton John and Tupac. Like that is absolutely insane that even happened. And this was held at East London Mosque. And, they've held spaces for people of the same ilk who have said, well, actually, in the West, we don't kill gays, but absolutely in a Sharia state, gays should be executed. So we held up signs calling out this mosque. We held up signs saying Allah is gay. We held up signs saying 13 Islamic states kill gay people. And Yasmine, when we were walking, like people were cheering for us. Somebody jumped over the barriers and ran up to Mariam and hugged her because, she's quite a figurehead for ex-Muslims.
Yeah.
Then the press get wind of it because what happens is one of the mosques complains to the Evening Standard and complains to Gay Pride. Gay Pride comes out and does a statement saying we will not tolerate Islamophobia, even though we had flipping Muslims marching. We had Muslims from Bangladesh come and march with us. Like they flew over from Bangladesh and were like, "Yep, we're marching with you because of what's happening to the bloggers in Bangladesh who are."
See, there's natural allies right there. Gay Pride.
And
but it's
so Gay Pride come out and make a statement as if we're Islamophobes, and then white gays went crazy. White gays on my Facebook went crazy with me. White gays in discussion groups that I'm in, they were like, "You Islamophobes, you're breeding hate against Muslims." I'm like, everybody else was marching for like Amazon, HSBC, Barclays Bank, like Bloomberg. We were the only people marching with political statements saying stop killing gays in these countries, and you're targeting us as some sort of hate-mongering group. That for me was the biggest wake up of the liberal left who have just, are far left and have gone insane. Like it's an absolute travesty and insanity. Fortunately, we met with Gay Pride more latterly, like after a long investigative period, and they've agreed to let us march again unrestricted this year. Because once they did their investigations, exactly.
But I mean,
once they did investigations, they were like, "Oh, actually, you don't hate Muslims." And Yasmine, in our meeting, I had to say, "You don't care about Muslims more than we do." I was literally thinking on that thing.
Yeah, but I mean, like what you're describing there, and it's. I wrote this in a little blog post 2 years ago. I said, the left, as it stands right now, they can't see the victims for the brown people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well
And
said. Really well said.
And it's
and
awesome.
I
tweet that.
No, but I take a thing that Hitchin said, and I kind of paraphrase something Hitchin said, and it's like these people are friends of victimhood. They're not friends of victims. They just want to perpetuate victimhood. They're benevolent bigots. they think they're doing good, but they're doing good by being bigoted.
Wait,
So-
you have too many things. So the too many quotes. They're benevolent dictators.
Bigots, not dictators. Bigots.
Oh, that's even better. Sorry, of course. Benevolent bigots.
You can't
They
see
can't see the victims
for
for
the
brown people.
That
You said
is-
one more.
Yalla.
They're friends of victimhood, not victims.
Oh, so good. Friends of victimhood and not
Can't see
victims.
the victims for the brown people.
But I mean,
Can't
it's
see the
it's
victims.
it,
That is
it,
an
dri-
essay waiting to happen. You can't see.
I
the
want a
victims for the
T-shirt
brown
with
people.
that on it.
Yeah.
I'll send you the. Okay, look, it was the first thing I wrote in 20 years that wasn't technical, so the prose is very laughable. I'm admitting that right up the front, but I'll send you guys the link. I think you've already read it once.
I think I have, and I shared it, but that's a great quote there.
You know, like hashtag not all. It takes me to the conversation about our parents. About I was looking at these white gays, and there was a couple of black gays as well, who are shouting at me for speaking up for people who are being murdered in my community because of homosexuality.
Their people. It's their people too.
Yeah,
they should also be shouting to you. That's their family.
Completely. But it was coming from such a good place. It was coming from this. We want to save you guys. We want to stick up for the Muslims. Like, we want to make sure you don't suffer from racism. We want to make sure that the far right don't gather ammunition. Just shh. And I'm like, listen.
No, but it's so condescending and it's so patronizing.
Yes,
it's
completely.
Like, you little children don't know how to deal with this yourselves. Let us adults talk, and we'll take care of you. And I like, no, okay, there are people who need people just like the people you're working with in Free Hearts Free Mind. They need help. But people like us who can talk and who are willing to talk. Yes, we want allies and we want people to help us get the message out. But we don't want allies in the sense of, okay, to be an ally with women, white men should quit jobs so women can take those jobs, right?
Right.
That's not what we want. We want people who are going to support us and who are going to let us speak. They talk about your lived experience. Well, this is our lived experience. Let us get our lived experience out there. But they just don't want to see it. And it's
and you don't even have to agree. Like, you don't even have to agree with what I'm doing. That's okay as well, right? Yasmine, if they don't agree with the fact that actually we're calling out Islamic countries, if you don't think that's okay, I think it's a bit perverse and it's a bit twisted. But okay, we're all okay to have our own opinions. But positioning me as anti-Muslim, that's what I can't get my head around. Like, don't try and act like after you're literally screaming at me at Facebook and I'm passing my mum her Quran. Like, how is that happening? I'm sitting next to my mum and she's in her dupatta and you're screaming at me for being anti-Muslim, but she's telling me to make sure it's halal meat I get from the shop. What are you talking about? Like, how am I anti-Muslim, you idiots? Like, that's what does my head in, is stop positioning us as if we're in this eternal battle with each other and you know better than me that I hate Muslims. What are you talking about? Absolutely crazy.
I think, to just like sum this up, it reminds me of something I said a long time ago, where it was, it's like, when will non-Muslims stop labeling us as Islamophobes just for sharing our experiences? When will Muslims stop saying that's not true as a means to silence us? When will people understand that when we are speaking about our issues, we're not trying to antagonize or breed hate, we just want our stories heard? And there are so many people out there who don't have their stories heard, which is the purpose of why we've created, things like Heretics Corner and Faith the Faithless and Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, Examna, Council of Ex-Muslims of New Zealand. And we just want to speak about our stories and just listen to us. And we just want you to understand that we are not just victims, we are survivors. Muslims aren't always the victim in every case. It's definitely a big thing where they see Muslims as a victim, and they are failing to understand that within communities, not just Muslims, whether it be African communities, Indian communities, Indonesian, Australian, American, Canadian, it doesn't matter what community you're in, there are always going to be aspects of your community which are negative, and you can't defend everything on them just because of a color of a skin or where they're from.
Yeah, listen, if I want to talk about racism, about white racism towards Pakistanis, 6 microphones are in my face immediately.
For sure.
Hey, come and have a chat. You've got a critique of white people and racism in white societies. Excellent. There's 6 microphones for you. Take your pick. But the minute I want to talk about issues within my own community, no, you're not allowed to do that because your community isn't privileged, and so therefore they are victims already. But, well, actually, even if that is true, what about the victims within the victims or the minorities within the minorities, right? Like, how comes we're not allowed to have choices or an opportunity to talk? And then, so ex-Muslims are a minority within Muslims. Gay ex-Muslims are minorities within the minorities. Like, please, can I have a dialogue? So why is it okay if I want to talk about my experiences of racism from white people, that's okay to have a dialogue about. That's my lived experience. That mustn't be challenged. That has to be given a platform. But if I want to talk about the homophobia in Muslim communities, be quiet.
There's a Moroccan ex-Muslim named Qasim al-Ghazali, and he wrote an article where he said, nobody wants to hear about your oppressor unless your oppressor is white.
Yep.
That's
so true.
Yeah, so true.
And one other thing I just want to, because for me, everything in our community, I know this sounds like such a sweeping statement. Once we destroy Islamic patriarchy, like once we destroy that, our community will transform. So
the women are fighting back, though. The women are fighting back. Look at the women in Iran. Look at the women in Saudi Arabia. Like, they're rising.
The minute
the
women destroy the patriarchy.
Can't get a voice in, Obaid.
We're never going to end this podcast. This
it's forever and ever.
We'll end on
but I just want to say
Thursday.
this one thing, like quickly, like when like you keep hearing it here, the future is female. I think for the Muslim world, that is more true than for anywhere else, because it's the women who are the most oppressed. It's the women who are bearing the brunt of all of this. And once they say, no, we've had enough, it's going to have to change. And I think it's happening.
So I have this phrase, which is the 21st century belongs to women of Muslim heritage. And I am not ever taking that down. That is literally what I'm living my life by, because in this century, Muslim women are going to turn this shit around. The other thing is this, you mustn't speak up about the oppression of gays in your community, in the Muslim community, because it makes Muslims look bad. For me, it rings true of when I was a youth, and in the 70s and 80s in the UK, Muslim women or South Asian women started saying, hang on a sec, when we get beaten up by our husbands, we go to like a community place for battered women, and then they help us and stay with us until our bruises go down, and then they send us back to our husbands, right? That's what we used to do with women of like South Asian heritage. So you'd get beaten up, go to some sort of community center run by other women in our communities, and then we send you back to your husband so that it'll be okay, don't worry, blah blah blah, and then you just come back a few weeks later and on it goes. But obviously, like within Western societies, they clocked on that this isn't the way forward, and white feminists were like, yeah, we're not sending you back to your husband, we're going to get you educated, we're going to get you a job, we're going to get you social housing, you're going to leave your husband, we're going to help you win your kids, you're going to have it all, right? Like, so, and then women in our South Asian community started looking at this and being like, this is a model that works, and how we should be treating women who are suffering from domestic violence. But the minute they started speaking up and taking action, Muslim men in the Muslim community said to them, shh, you're making Muslims look bad. And this is the same thing that's happening with ex-Muslims. It's the same thing that's happening with gay Muslims. Like, there's never going to be a time where our community is going to say, okay, now you're allowed to talk about the horrendous shit that we've been doing to you for like the last gazillion years. There'll never be a time. So we have to make that time. We have to say that time is now.
Yeah, we have to lay the stepping stone for the future generations. Guys, my battery's about to die.
Yes, I was just about to wrap it all up here. It would definitely need to get Jimmy and Yasmine. We'll definitely have to get you back on, because I feel like we can just talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. We've covered so many topics. The work you guys do individually and together is absolutely admirable. It inspires so many people. You are helping so many people. Just by speaking up and having a presence online definitely helps. Which, like, that's what I always believe in, is if you just speak up, one person speaks up, people will take notice. And the more of us that are speaking up, the more of us that are trying to help and guide and support and sharing all these stories is definitely going to help a lot. If you don't know their socials, I will definitely be putting them down below. But Yasmine, we all know Yasmine. I was a fangirl of hers for a long time, and when she responded to one of my tweets, I freaked the fuck out.
I'm a fangirl of Yasmine's.
So
Yeah,
cute.
I'm a fangirl of you too, Jamie. Don't worry. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on. We definitely want to have you back. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I know it was a nightmare. We've got Canadians, we've got Americans, we've got Australians, we've got an English person. It can work. We can get everyone on talking. But yeah, no, it was great. Is there anything you want to say finally before you head off, Yasmine?
Just want to say thank you very much. It was an honor for you to have Jimmy and I on as your first guests to talk about Free Hearts, Free Minds. I'm really, really grateful. And I hope that there are listeners that are going to feel like they can come to us for support, because that's what we want to do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. And Jimmy, anything you'd like to say before we say farewell?
So, I echo, this has been absolutely amazing. It's been so good to talk to you guys, and I feel like it's an absolute privilege to be invited onto the podcast. So, you know, we sometimes don't hear the gay voices in our community, and it's really good to give them a sounding board. In addition to that, I just want to personally say thank you to everyone who actually donated to Free Hearts, Free Minds.
Oh my gosh, of course.
You know, we go to work, we earn our money, and actually to be so generous to say, actually, you know, I've worked hard for this cash and I'm going to give some of this to help somebody else who's in a difficult position. It says something about them as people, and it says something, those are the kind of people we want in this world, and we want more of them. So just a big thank you to those people, and let them know that, you know, read the testimonials, guys. They are changing people's lives, and you really
saving
are
lives.
Yeah, you really are saving lives.
Yeah. And again, like I said, absolute pleasure having you guys on. Obaid, do you have anything to say before we end?
No, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks again, Yasmine and Jimmy, for coming on. It was awesome. And we'll try to spread the word for what you guys are doing.
And Deen, any final words from you?
Not really. I'm not that important.
Oh, don't say that.
We might have something coming up soon. In terms of a public face for the Australian ex-Muslim community.
Ex-Muslims,
But,
yeah.
Other than that, there's nothing really to say.
Oh, shout out to Australian accents as well, by the way.
I know, I love them.
Like, so awesome. British accents are so rubbish. Like, it's just a pleasure to like hear you guys.
No.
Yeah, no, it's good. And don't worry, we will be alive next week. Me and Deen promise to not get eaten by any spiders or snakes or wallabies or dingoes or anything like that. We promise it's not going to happen.
And I promise not to freeze to death up north.
All right. Well, again, I know I keep repeating myself, but like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. All the best with your futures, guys. And yeah, exciting things are happening.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.